Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams. But we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other.
On being you. Today's topic is the seventh principle. Respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part.
Respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part, was not one of the original 6 principles. Due to our growing awareness of the sacred circle of life and the need to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature, it was added in the 1980s. But we can't say that us UUs were on the cutting edge of taking a stand for environmental protection. In the 1960s, Mother Nature began sounding alarms, signaling us how we no longer were living in harmony, but actually actively destroying our environment. In 1962, Rachel Carson wrote Silent Spring. In 1970, the United States had 5.7% of global population and consumed 40% of the natural resources. Rivers catching fire and burning was not an urban myth. It actually happened. And the air was just as polluted. Believe it or not, it was Richard Nixon who recognized and believed what the scientists were saying. And in the summer of 1970, he sponsored the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency. Nixon stated, "Shall we surrender to our surroundings, or shall we make our peace with nature and begin to make reparations for the damage we have done to our air, to our land, and to our water?" And ironically, today, the EPA is on Trump's hit list of things to be eliminated. When I was young, my toys were wood and metal. If you wanted to keep water off of it, you used rubber sheeting. Plastic was not an active part of the everyday household. And when it came in, it was wonderful. I mean, tablecloths could be wiped clean. And I even had an aunt that covered her living room furniture in it. A new study has found since 1950, the world has produced 19 billion tons of plastic, and less than 10% has been recycled. Jeff Mulgan, Chief Executive of the National Endowment for Science, Technology, and the Arts, and an influential writer on social and political issues, stated, "The biggest barrier to dealing with climate change is us, our own attachment to habits that are hard to shift, and our great ability to park or ignore uncomfortable choices." I'd like to leave you with this. with my apologies to Margaret Wise Brown and her goodnight moon. On the great green earth, there were trees in the ground and birds in the air. There were fish in the seas and monkeys in the trees. In the jungles, there were tigers, and in the forests, there were bears. In the cities, there were people, and on the farms, there were people. There were people everywhere. But now all is changing. The seas, the forests, the jungles, the air, and the people, the creatures, everything is changing everywhere. Goodbye, monkeys. Goodbye, trees. Goodbye, fish. Goodbye, seas. Goodbye, tigers and jungles and forests and bears. Goodbye, people in cities. Goodbye, people on farms. Goodbye, dear creatures everywhere. Goodbye, goodbye, our great green earth.
Today's opening words are number 596. Let us cultivate boundless goodwill.
Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state.
Let none in anger or ill will wish another harm.
Even as a mother watches over her child, so with boundless mind should one cherish all living beings.
Radiating friendliness over the whole world.
Above, below, and all around, without limit. And I might mention metta means love, the Metta Sutta.
Once to every soul and nation comes the moment to decide in the strife of truth with falsehood for the good or evil side. Then to stand with truth is noble when we share its ratchet crust. Ere that cause bring fame and profit, and 'tis prosperous to be just. Though the cause of evil prosper, yet is truth alone is strong. Though its portion be the scaffolds, and upon the throne be wrong, then it is the brave one chooses, while the coward stands aside, till the multitude make virtue of the faith they have denied.
Today's transitional words are to live content with small means. To live content with small means. To seek elegance rather than luxury and refinement rather than fashion. To be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich. To study hard, think quietly, talk gently, act frankly. To listen to stars and birds, to babes and sages with open heart. To bear all cheerfully, to do all bravely. Await occasions, hurry never. To let the spiritual, unbidden, and unconscious grow up through the common. This is to be my symphony. William Henry Channing.
Well, the talk really did have a title, and the title is The Meaning of Home. For many of us, our relationship with home has intensified this year. The pandemic has given many of us new appreciation for and concerns about the places we call home and the centrality of these places in our lives. During this year, during Guests at Your Table, we invite you to witness stories of our partners around the world as they tell you about home. Our partners in Central America are working to make sure No one is forced to flee their home due to violence or economic devastation. Our partners in Alaska, Louisiana, and the Pacific are fighting for their homes and ancestral lands against the ravages of extractive industries and climate change. And our partners in Burma and Bangladesh and beyond are working tirelessly to support the rights of the Rohingya ethnic minority of Burma after facing government-backed genocide in their homeland. Guest at your table is UUSC's, that's the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Its annual intergenerational program is used to raise support and awareness about key human rights issues. Since the Service Committee works in more than 20 countries with over 60 grassroots partners, there are thousands of individuals involved in and who benefit from the work of our members make possible. The program is an opportunity to celebrate grassroots partnerships, support human rights, and learn about just 4 of these individuals, the guests in Guest at Your Table. And we have a little prop here. This is a Guest at Your Table box. And you're supposed to put it on your dining room table. And every time you sit down to eat, you should make a small contribution for the food for the food that you might have spent supporting your guest at your table. And in February, actually February 1st, or whatever Sunday is close to that, we will collect the money and send it to the Service Committee. Today, I'll read a sermon by the Reverend Laurel Randall. There is a large water stain on the bathroom ceiling. Peeling wallpaper in the bedroom and the kitchen linoleum witnessed the Nixon administration. My home is filled with creaks, clutter, and too much dog hair. And oh, do I love it. I know my family and I are among the most privileged in the world right now. I have work and the ability to do that work from home. I have running water, electricity, and a space for a few raised garden beds outside. In some ways, my physical world has gotten so very small these last months. Seeing the same rooms and the same patch of earth so consistently, unceasingly, is a new experience for me. The urge to go somewhere, anywhere, is strong. Yet I have never had more appreciation for the space my family and I call home. These unremarkable walls keep us warm and hold all the gratitude and anxiety these times have created in us. With all the uncertainty and upheaval surrounding us now, I have never been more aware of the importance of home, the importance of a place of shelter, stability, and belonging. Not all of us have this experience of home. For some of us, home is, or was, anything but stable and welcoming. Home can be dangerous, and I know there are some of us who work essential jobs who have had to leave their homes to keep their families safe from the virus. There are also those of us for whom that kind of separation is not an option, and therefore the whole family is at risk for exposure. Some of us never feel safe in our homes, knowing that at any moment, state agents could burst through the door to arrest us or kill us. And then there are many of us who find ourselves in the liminal place of no permanent home at all. Home is complicated. It is a place and it is a longing. It's a physical structure and it's a community of people. It's an anchor and an imagined ideal. Home is a fundamental necessity and an evolving act of creativity. Home is the foundation upon which we build our lives and the outcome of countless generative acts of love and repair. The work of the Service Committee is fundamentally about home in so many ways. This has been true since our founding 80 years ago when the Unitarian Service Committee partnered with Jewish refugees and political dissidents in Europe in an effort to get as many people fleeing the Nazi regime as possible to safety. And those of you who remember Ken Burns' documentary on the Sharps, the Sharps were some of the initial people in the service committee as we know it today. Today, our work focuses on climate force displacement, crisis response, and migrant justice. While these initiatives may seem unrelated at first glance, they are at their core, all about home. The right to security within our homes, the right to restore our homes when they are ravaged by natural or human-made disasters, and the right to seek new homes elsewhere. The 4 Service Committee partners highlighted in this year's Guest at Your Table program each share stories that are primarily about the homes they are fighting for, be that the villages they are trying to salvage from the effects of climate change, the communities that are trying to hold together as they navigate disaster and persecution, or the necessity of finding a new place to call home away from home. Chief Sherrill, chief of the Choctaw tribe in southern Louisiana, has been advocating for her community for as long as she can remember. She has seen the land her tribe calls home drastically changed in her lifetime, as rising sea levels and saltwater infiltration have claimed homes and destroyed the farmland her tribe depends on for sustenance. Recently, Chief Sherrill joined with other First Nations and Indigenous people facing similar climate force displacement, taking their fight all the way to the United Nations. Chief Sherrill explains, "We have joined together with our Alaskan relatives to bring awareness to the damages caused by greed and selfishness, with a complete disregard for Mother Earth and all living beings. We are showing the world that you do not have to just sit by and watch our planet, our health, and lifeways be destroyed." Thousands of miles away, Mark Steege, climate researcher with the Service Committee's organization, Joe Jeekum, is working on similar climate issues facing communities in the Marshall Islands. As an Indigenous scientist, that's a peculiar Indigenous scientist, Mark is committed to involving his community in the climate crisis research that affects them most, so that the full picture of what they are facing can be understood and planned for. Collaboration is the key to handle complexity, and so I've been motivated to develop the tools for collaboration by sharing and adapting both Western and Indigenous knowledge to promote innovation and identity, says Mark. And that's generally the idea of the Service Committee, is that they have a collaboration. They don't come in and say, yeah, we'll fix this problem, fix it, and then go away. They collaborate and they stay until they feel they are no longer needed, but they do indeed collaborate rather than just ordering people around. Just as the Service Committee partners in those fighting to save their homes, we also partner with those who have been forced to find new homes elsewhere. In 2017, over 700,000 Rohingya Muslims from the Rakhine state in Burma have been forced to flee their homes into neighboring countries due to genocide perpetrated by the Burmese military. Suja Karamindan was compelled to escape his home as a teenager after being detained and tortured by the Burmese state officials. Suja struggles with the longing to return to his homeland, but he has found strength within the Rohingya diaspora community, knowing that even in the depths of loss, there can be a bit of home for each other. We try to build a sense of community wherever we are, wherever we live, Suja says. Towards that end, Suja co-founded the Elam Empowerment Community Center, now a Service Committee partner organization. Elam Empowerment is a Rohingya-led community center based in Malaysia that conducts youth capacity building trainings and facilitates food distribution. According to Suja, the goal of Elam Empowerment is to provide a safe space for Rohingya refugees to come and breathe, a space where they can come and feel free. Many Central American migrants are seeking a place where they can feel free as well. Residents of Central American countries such as Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua are still contending with the aftermath of intense civil wars, some of which lasted decades, which targeted the indigenous people in these lands along with poor farmers. To this day, extractive mining and drilling industries, drought exacerbated by climate change, and deadly domestic and state-sponsored violence force people from their homes and across borders. Women, LGBTQI+ people, and indigenous people are especially at risk for these factors that lead to building a new home elsewhere. Adela Ramirez, a human rights advocate for the Service Committee's partner in Guatemala, says the majority of people here live in conditions that are not good, and poverty prevents them from fully living their lives. People cross the border in search of new opportunities for their families. That is why we always say that migrating is an act of love. Migration is an act of love, and this act of love is being met by increasing cruelty, xenophobia by the United States. Decades of draconian and deadly U.S. immigration policies are culminating in crowded detention centers, which provide ideal breeding grounds for COVID, a near-complete destruction of the asylum system, the destruction of humanitarian aid stations in Arizona by Border Patrol agents, the dismantling of due process in deportation proceedings, and still the continuation of family separation. Not only are these actions cowardly, hard-hearted, and small-minded, they also fundamentally deny a truth that could not be clearer. We are all connected. Those of us privileged enough to currently have safe and relatively stable homes are reflecting on the centrality of such places have in our lives, especially now. Does the possibility of losing this home seem as distant as it once did? Can we imagine the results of climate change making our homes uninhabitable in the near future? Or what about government policies making it impossible to stay? This is already a reality for some, and for others of us, these potentialities no longer seem improbable. This is a lot to take in. The question now is, can we channel this uncertainty, this fear, into empathy and commitment? Can we approach these challenges with a spirit of collaboration and determination? Can we recognize our interdependence enough to realize that our homes, our health, and our lives are inextricably connected? And that's a nice reinforcement of today's seventh principle. We are all connected. Nobody just simply appeared. We all came from somewhere. This earth is our home. Some of us live on the same patch of land our ancestors have called home for millennia. Others of us have called this land home for a few generations. Some of us long for a distant home we remember from our youth, and others have always lived in the town we call home. Regardless of the miles between us, this earth is our home. The distress of our planet and the turmoil of our societies, these are the circumstances we find ourselves in, regardless of what we wish were true instead. Our relationships to our homes have dramatically intensified this year. Do we have the courage to turn that intensity into compassion? Can we feel, not just know, but feel the primacy of the value of everyone and everywhere, and that all have the right to self-determination and safety in their homes? Some essential part of everyone longs for a sense of peace, a sense of belonging, a sense of rightness that can be described in no other way than home. At the Service Committee, we will continue to honor that longing and fight for the right of people to claim, create, and be home. Okay. There's a little bit more that I wanted to say, other than just read a sermon, and that is that probably a year or so ago, I read a book by Jodi Picoult. And if you know her as an author, she often writes about certain diseases, and then she puts them into the story. And this one story was about a family, two parents, and a boy and a girl. And the girl had brittle bone disease. And so the story goes on that, there were all sorts of compensations that had to be made for the girl. And lots of times plans had to be rearranged because something had happened and they had to take care of it. And often the boy was in charge of things like bringing papers with them that showed that she had this disease, because if they went on vacation, for instance, and they had a problem and they weren't in what they considered home, they needed to prove that they were not battering this child. So one time they went on vacation, but the boy forgot the papers, and of course it was a disaster. But they got through it all right. And the next year there was a camp, and it was a camp for families who had a disadvantaged child. And so he and his parents and his sister went, and they met another family that also had a disadvantaged child. And there was a boy who was the same age as the boy in the story, and they became fast friends. And the first boy looked at the second boy and sort of wondered. He watched him very carefully and noticed that he was always very kind and very considerate and very loving and very appreciative of his sister with the disability. He never said an angry word. He never indicated that things should be better or things could be better. And so he asked his friend, "How do you have this attitude that is so wonderful? I get so angry at my sister, I get so confused, and I get so just terrible." And the other boy said, "It could have been me." And that's what I think about these stories for Guest at Your Table. It could have been me. And so I'd like to leave you with that thought, and thank you.
Today's closing hymn is number 378.